housing market versus the condo market. And like I said, this is really a tale of two cities, like the Charles Dickens novel. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah,
You in
yeah.
a closet there?
What's that?
Like a long hallway? You're in a closet?
No, this is as good as it gets here at my office. I can give you the tour anytime you're around.
Yeah, I got a new spot every time, right?
All right. Well, how's it going?
Yeah, good. You've been working hard this week.
Yeah, yeah. It's still busy. As predicted, this is not a summer kind of lull. This is a busy spring market.
No, everybody else has a tan but me. You were saying, we were chatting the other day, and you were saying that the condo market's doing some funny things, right? Like there's like, you were saying a few things like, oh, the market is, we're expecting more supply all of a sudden. Maybe there's more buildings coming out. Like, what are you seeing with that? Because I think it's a really interesting part of the market.
Yeah, I'm definitely seeing a change and a shift in the condo market compared to the housing market. And it's been kind of a tale of two cities. I have, I brought slides as I always like to
Of
do.
course you did.
So if you want to share a screen, you can jump into it.
You mean this isn't just a random conversation we're having? And like, oh, I happen to have some slides about what I just randomly bring up.
These slides that I prepare, I use in buyer presentations. Again, I'm doing still a lot of Zoom calls with buyers and sellers. And so it's a great tool to have to open up and okay, no different than I share with you what we're sharing, but I share the same thing with the people that I meet with.
Awesome.
It's great to have this at my fingertips, ready to go at any time.
I'm going to bring up something random next week. I'm
Okay.
not going to let you any.
Catch me off guard. I'll probably have a slide for it.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you share a screen so I can jump in here? Or?
Did I not let you do it?
Let me see here. Yeah, here it is. Okay. All right. So the housing market versus the condo market. And like I said, this is really a tale of two cities, like the Charles Dickens novel. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times.
Was the worst of times.
Yeah. So here's the TREB stats, the markets that were put out for June, just comparing detached housing to condos. And we can see the average price for a house in Toronto. And these are all the numbers I'm presenting today, or statistics are for the city of Toronto boundary. So this isn't for all of GTA.
Okay.
I really narrowed it down to the city. And so the average price for a detached home in Toronto is sitting at about 1.5 million, and condos are about 672,000. This represents a kind of year-over-year increase for houses as 14% and condos 6% increase. Really, of all the numbers here, the biggest ones that I wanted to point out is the months of inventory. The big difference here is the number, how fast houses are selling compared to the inventory and how fast condos are selling to the inventory. And you can see that there's a big difference between these two numbers in terms of how fast inventory is selling. So if we break down a little bit more in depth, here's the weekly new listings for houses and condos. And to make it simple, houses are in green, condos are in blue for the slides going forward. And really you can see, since the bottom out of COVID, everything's on an increase, both in terms of houses and condos, but the real is to the degree or the significance in which they're increasing. So housing at this point now is above, previous years, but I would say this is more as a relative to the fact that at this time we're going into the summer market, and the housing market is really influenced by the school system, right? So a lot of houses, as people upgrade, as soon as school ends, people take off and start their summer vacation. Condos have less of an influence in that way because the demographics seem to buy heavier in the spring and it goes later into the summer before it really kind of dies down in July and August.
Yeah, I noticed, this is a good indication of where the market's at, why it feels like the spring market right now. Because if you look, like those numbers are kind of still approaching, kind of like early spring that we're having right now, right? Like the green, the blue is well above.
Yeah, you can see compared to, springtime highs, we're still for the freehold market for detached, it's still well below springtime highs.
Yeah.
Right? Compared to condos, we're well above the springtime highs. So anyone who's working with condos, I'm even getting a lot more inquiries for listing condos and houses. That's just, there is a push to get condos out there that wasn't seen during COVID.
Is this because a lot of people that wanted to sell their condo during COVID weren't able to. There's a lot of restrictions on buildings, right? Like a lot of people weren't able to put their, um, condos out for sale, and now maybe people are upgrading or they're moving outside the city. Is it also investors that are getting off there? They're not able to rent it out, or
Yeah,
is
I
just
think
this just some more supply coming to market?
yeah, I think it is combined of all those factors. I think that's why we're seeing such the highs for condos is that you're right, during COVID, some buildings completely shut down and said no real estate involvement at all. Even though we were deemed an essential service, condo boards are individually operated, and a condo can get together and say and vote on saying we don't want real estate agents or buyers coming in and out of our building. And that's what a few buildings did. Quite a handful of them did that during COVID. And then even the ones that were still allowing showings during COVID had severe restrictions that made it very challenging. So yeah, absolutely, that is a push from sellers now saying, okay, we can now operate a little bit more smoothly and letting people into our building, people more comfortable. And as well as with rents coming down, the rental market for condos have come down about 10% in Toronto. So I think we're starting to see people kind of start to list to see where the value of their condo is at and how things are going.
Yeah, I wonder if this is the Airbnb effect, right? Like not as much tourism coming to the city, not as much demand for those short-term rentals. And I think people are pushing their condos out for rent rather than for, one-offs. I'm wondering if that's kind of the effect of COVID with tourism and how that's affecting the housing market. Because we do need those. It is great to have those units available for sale or for rent rather than just in short-term rental.
Absolutely. And anecdotally, I think one of the last demographics you can lump in there with Airbnbs and sellers who couldn't sell during COVID is being stuck in your condo versus being stuck in a house for 4 months was a very different experience for people that I talked to. And the condo buyers are now looking to say, maybe I can sell my condo or sell my investment and buy a bigger house, buy outside the city. So we are definitely seeing more migration away from condos, or people thinking about listing and selling their condo because they want to explore other options.
Yeah. That noticing on the condo listing, or that's home listings, how deep that trough is, like how far down in terms of listings we went and during the middle of COVID, and then kind of bounced back up pretty well. But the condos really jump up after that. After not going quite as deep, it looks like.
No, it doesn't go quite as deep, and it rebounds much more significantly. That's the big difference I'm seeing in the two markets. And now this is the sales. Again,
Okay.
same colors here, but you can see similar patterns. I'd say the biggest difference in the pattern of the sales is that condos haven't jumped up in terms of number of sales like it did for new listings. So even though we see almost a exact similarity trends between, I'll flip back here, houses, new weekly listing for houses and sales for houses are very similar. Condos, not like the dip for condos were quite significant, and the return of sales haven't been as pronounced.
Right.
And so that is creating the difference in that month of inventory stat, as you can see here. And again, baseline sales were reaching back to springtime levels, and condos are kind of just starting to peak in around there, but they're not doing what they're doing on the listing end. Just sales are hovering around previous years. So here's the houses versus condo ratios, and this represents new listings to sales and active inventory to sales to track how hot the market is. And you can see, really, when I got into real estate in 2009, like it was always just a known fact from early 2000, the housing market is much hotter than the condo market. And that's just the way things were. People looking to get a house, it was always a seller's market. Condos could fluctuate from a balanced market to a buyer's market. But really, housing and detached housing was the hot commodity. And that changed in 2016. And it started with the Vancouver announcing their foreign buyers tax, and we had a flood of investors come over into Toronto and start investing in Toronto condos. And so we saw Toronto, really the condos move from a buyer's market very rapidly, move to a seller's market. And when that market corrected in 2017, they literally flipped. So where the condos are now was now the hot market, and the average price for condos didn't change after 2017. They continued to rise, and it was a seller's market. It's been a seller market since 2017. Now during COVID, as we're coming out, we're starting to see that shift flip back, where housing is becoming more balanced to seller's market, and the condos are going to more of a buyers to balanced market. So
Now, do you
that's
think
the
this
shift.
is is this an ongoing trend, or is this something that's going to bounce back,
Yeah,
or is
my
this a slow
forecast,
recovery?
I think my forecast, and as we go into the further data dissect it, is I think it's going to be a long-term trend, whereas condos are going to continue to be more in the balanced buyers market for the immediate future, and housing is going to stay significantly hotter. Like it's going to be a limited inventory for housing.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. More people want houses. More people don't want to be stuck in a condo. They want a backyard. They want to be able to exit their house without taking an elevator or seeing, a lot of people. That's really important during COVID, that you can keep that social distance where, the minute you walk out of your condo into the hallway, you're needing to distance yourself and social distance. Whereas when you're in a house, you can walk into your backyard, out your front door and be relatively safer, I would say, because you're outside right away. You don't need to get past that first thing. So I think that's something that will be an ongoing trend. I think we'll see that people they don't have to live in a condo. I mean, many people do. Many people, that's the price point that they can afford. But if you can't afford a house, I can see people choosing that option rather than the condo.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right in that those kind of livable factors are going to play into the condo market for the next, the next few months. Let's say for the rest of the third quarter, fourth quarter, even into next year. I think another factor is that with the rents coming down at so far 10%, and a lot of the stuff, long-term economy for Canada and the world up in air, investors and people are taking less risk in terms of assuming that I'm going to buy this condo, I'm going to carry negative cash flow on it, so every month I'm now shelling out money because my perception is that in the long term I'm going to be making appreciation on it every year. With everything kind of up in the air right now, investors are a little more cautious to say I'm going to take loss in order for future gains. And I think that's going to impact until there's confidence back in the market, in the economy. I think condos are going to take that hit, and they're going to bear the brunt of that. And I think really the amount of inventory for condos coming in, we're going to feel the pinch of the decrease in condo buildings next year. So there's a lag in terms of a lot of construction projects were put on hold. A lot of developers slowed down their launch of projects because of what happened during COVID. And I think by next year, when sales centers are open up or when projects are being complete, we're going to start feeling less inventory in the market, and then we'll start seeing condos pick back up when as a lag to the construction cycle.
So you're saying that we're going to get more supply next year, and that's going to,
I think that we're gonna see less supply over the
less
next few
supply.
months, right? And that
Okay.
because a lot of developers have put projects on hold or on the back burner during this time,
Yeah.
right? They
I
want to see
think,
what's happening.
yeah, I think you're right. I think that there's an influx of supply right now, and that will get absorbed by the market. And as a bit of a delay with builders getting projects back on track or maybe back to market, we'll have. I think this is a bit of just a like a burp of supply all of a sudden on the market, which will dissipate. I think that that's something that will go away, and we'll get back to a regular supply ratio soon.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's just going to take some time before that happens. I think we're going through, I was listening to another economist recently, and we're going through phases of COVID. Right now, this is really the rebound phase from pent up demand and supply now rushing to the market. Then there's going to be maybe a lull to come as people are trying to figure out their job security, their job situation, even business capacities. And as we reach our new norms going forward, then people will be more confident or, have a better idea of where the market's going, and then we'll start making decisions and we'll start seeing demand come back to the market.
Amazing. Well, that's really insightful, Paul. Do you have
Yeah.
more?
Yeah, I have a few more here. We were talking about a bit about this. I don't know if you mentioned, but the difference between house average prices and condo average prices.
Yeah.
And that difference. And so really you can see here, it peaked in 2016 where the difference between the average house price versus the average condo price was at its highest, and it was almost at 200%. So it almost took, if you were to buy in a condo, the average price of a detached house was almost 200% more, right?
Wow.
And then it's come down since 2017, but really the last 2 years, we're still sitting below that difference level below where it usually is.
Right. Oh,
So
that's
I think we have
interesting.
room for some freehold growth before condo. And I think that's what we're going to see, some freehold growth before condo kicks back in.
That's amazing considering to me how aggressive pricing is getting for freehold, detached, semi-detached, anything in the core seems to be going up pretty rapidly.
Yeah, I mean, looking at average, I don't have a line to show it, but really the average price for detached peaked at almost 1.6 million back in the height of 2017. Like I think April was the highest monthly average price. We still even haven't hit that level yet. So I think we're
Right.
still rebounding in terms of average price for detached housing from 2017.
Amazing.
Um, this is the kind of the summary, and the big key factors here. You can see sales. I broke down a 5-year average to give a better idea of how off we are this month to the last 5 years of June.
Yeah.
So comparatively speaking, you can see sales for June last month was 22% down for houses and about 28% down for condos. Compared that to really new listings for condos, new listings are 12% up to above the 5-year average, and new listings for houses are still down -10%. So what does that mean? Well, active listing for detached housing is still super tight at 21%. And whereas the active inventory for condos is now at 8%. And my expectation is by July, that's going to be like 0%. We're going to be kind of really close to previous year's active levels.
Yeah. Even July to July, you think, I feel like we're going to be more indicative, like this is going to be like a hot July month. I think we'll be above normal levels versus below normal levels for July.
Yeah.
Like, I just feel like there's so much going on that doesn't usually happen in a normal summer month. I mean, maybe outside of like a 2016 when things were starting to really cook. But I think I'm interested to see the numbers. I mean, I know, how hard everybody I'm talking to in the real estate business right now is working. I know everybody's out there. It's a lot of activity, a lot of interest, a lot of pent up demand. Um, but we'll see what happens. I think it's a really, I know we'll look back on this time like we look back on 2017 as, the explosion of the real estate market and the introduction of the 16-point fair housing plan and the results of that. That's something we'll always talk about. And I think with this pandemic is creating another interesting scenario in the housing market that's not likely to be repeated. There's lessons to be learned, but it's not something that's going to happen all the time.
Yeah. Well, you can see how quickly a shift like a policy change like that had in 2017, where it literally flipped the market for condos and housing, and how quickly
Yeah.
it can flip back during a pandemic, right? So that's the volatility of the market. But I think my expectations for July is that we're going to see above sales for both homes and condos in July. New listings will be above both, for detached housing and condos. But what's going to stay low is the number of active inventory.
Right.
So housing is still going to have that. It won't be 21%, but let's say it's down another 5 or 10%. So it'll be at closer to where active inventory levels should be at this time, but it will still be below, right? Leading to the hot market and the high prices for detached, where condos I think are going to reach normal levels.
Yeah. Well, that's really insightful. I'm looking forward to when do the Trev numbers come out? Like first week in August, like August 5th or something. So after the long weekend, I guess, right?
Yeah, it'll be something. I mean, the longest long weekend may cause a delay at the Trev offices, but yeah, that first week of August we'll have those numbers, and everyone will be looking into them quite, the same way we did, dissecting them, trying to understand them, because this is unprecedented time where people
Yeah.
are just so hungry for information to determine what our future is going to hold.
Yeah. So awesome, Paul. Thanks for sharing all that insight. It's I learn something every time we chat.
Of course, Sean, happy to share.
All right, man. Well, let's looking forward to next week. We're gonna do this next week early, right?
Absolutely. You have a great weekend. It's beautiful out, and hopefully you enjoy your weekend with your
I
kids.
will. All right. Have a good one.
See you. Take care.
Bye.